Hey, it's Ben, and this is Drambo by Beep Street. Specifically, this is Drambo 2.0, which means the update is here. I think people are going to be really happy to see what's all in here, and that's what this video is going to be. So I'm just going to be walking through, focusing on the new features. It's also going to be kind of an orientation to the full user interface and kind of getting around all the different parts of the app. I'm not going to focus on the modular part of Drambo at all, or barely at all. But this is really meant to be both something for previous users who are getting used to the update, which is a really big update, but also for new users, potentially. But for modular help, there's a lot of other videos on YouTube on how to do all the modular stuff within Drambo. So I will just say right now that I think it's taken what was already a really fun and powerful application and turned it into more of a complete music production environment, and it's really taken it more into DAW territory. So to start, I'm just going to show you kind of the visual sections of Drambo. This top area is called the rack, and that is where you put all of the modules. Drambo is a modular groove box. So you build instruments, or you build effects, or you build Midi and sequencing contraptions with the modules. And you also load AUV3 or audio unit instruments and effects and Midi effects as modules. And they all connect together kind of automatically, and you can route them on your own as well. Here is where you switch tracks. Now the default project opens with 8 tracks, 2 sends, and then a master track. You can add more tracks. You can have a project with 1 track or no tracks, just a main rack. It doesn't really matter. But that's where you switch tracks. This is the step sequencer. So this is where you add in notes. Then this layer down here, this is kind of where you get some more controls. So there's a piano roll. There's some extra step sequencing tools here. There's automation, which there's nothing to show right now. You have a select tool for selecting here steps on the step sequencer, but it also works in the piano roll. This button turns on the crossfader, which is a performance feature. It allows you to set parameters on your modules and morph between them. You get 16 banks. It's kind of like a macro control. This is your nav bar. It allows you to look at different bars in your sequence. And here's a clip sequence, kind of like setting tool. Your transport, if you hit record and you don't do anything with play, this becomes an auto advanced sequencer, or like a step entry tool, so you can just tap notes and it enters them in automatically. Go ahead and delete that. Okay, and then you have a mute button and an undo. And undo plus other buttons does a number of different, it's like a shortcut kind of for different sort of functions. You have paths by default in chromatic mode, but you can change the modes. So you can have different scales, and you can set a key for your scale with this hamburger menu. You can turn pads off, and you just get a keyboard. And then you have a track mode, where you can trigger the instruments or the sounds on each track. And then you even have a pattern mode, which will make sense if you pull this down and show the clip launcher. So the last feature, major feature for the user interface is the clip launcher. And that's where you can create different clips on a track, and you can use it as like a pattern sequencer where you launch all the clips in one pattern, or you can launch clips individually, doesn't really matter. And then you have some clip controls over here. And everything is, a lot of the user interface you can kind of move around, as you can see. Okay, adding things to your rack. You hit the plus sign, it opens up a module library. You have categories like generators, processors, modulators, things that make sound, things that process signal or sound, modulation sources. Mixer is like a mix of combining signal and then different kinds of operations with like stereo and mono and polyphonic and monophonic. Modules that deal with Midi versus audio or like control signal. Miscellaneous is just a lot of different stuff. And then math modules. There's also a different set of categories if you hit the tag button. So all of your oscillators, or all of your filters, or all of your envelopes, all of your amplifier kinds of things, all of your audio units, for example. So you can choose to use whichever one you want. There's module help for a lot of the modules. I don't think there's help for every single module. Kind of just like a description. So to show you how simple it is to start adding things and kind of get started with modular, even though the focus of this video isn't on the modular aspect, we'll add an oscillator under generator. We'll add an amp envelope. We probably want a filter and maybe some distortion with a shaper, and then maybe like just some reverb at the end. To get rid of a module that you don't want, you drag down. I'll probably put in like the analog filters because they sound so nice. And you can rearrange things just by like holding and dragging. Okay, if we want to add some modulation, like LFO and envelope, you can tap the pin, and now I can add multiple modules without having to reopen the adder. Knobs that have a little triangle next to them, that means they can take modulation source. So tap the parameter and then select the output of the module that you want, like the LFO and the envelope, and then you can set how much modulation you want. So you'll see that things just kind of like they connect automatically. Generally, the modules are going to look for the signal that makes sense. So this little wave, that is generally audio signal. So the filter is looking for like a sound source. The amp envelope is looking for a sound source. The reverb is looking for a sound source. Things like the envelope and the amp envelope, they also have a velocity input and a gate input, so they know when to trigger the envelope and open up. Turn this up so you can hear it, I guess. And then the oscillator obviously has pitch input, so we can play it. Things like velocity and gate or trigger and pitch are might come from your Midi to CV module. So that's what takes the Midi signal that you play in and it converts it into the modular signal. You get up to 16 voices of polyphony per like stream of modules that you're using. So you could have 2 Midi to CV modules on a track, and you could have 2 different layers, which would end up being more than 16 total voices. But for anyone like stream, you're going to have 16 voices. Now, you don't have to use the automatic assignment, so I can add like another oscillator, do like a square or a pulse. And if you want to override something, you just tap the input and you select a different output. And you'll see the colors change, so you can kind of use the colors as a cue. So the filter is pink because it's getting signal from the pink oscillator. Now it's purple because it's getting signal from the purple oscillator. You can also combine signal with a mixer. I'm not much of a sound designer or keyboard player. anyways, that's how you add stuff. To get rid of a module, again, you just swipe down. You can also hold and select and then drag, or you can copy things here, select all, and then delete. So if you have a really long rack, you can just select all and delete. You might want to know about presets. So there's a couple different ways. There are instrument racks and processor racks and MIDI racks, and those are like containers. So you could add things in a rack. So I can save a preset of all of these modules together with all their settings and their wirings. Go to presets and save. I can save it in a folder. There are factory presets, a couple different categories. Same goes for the processor and the MIDI racks. You get presets, and then you can do different things like hide a module and then fold it, and you're going to have a much more compact view. You can also like actually fold it into like no space at all if you want to, but it'll still sound out. And then there's also track presets. You can tap the track header and that pulls up track options. This has to do with like audio routing between tracks, MIDI input and output, a couple other things. You can do that from the main rack as well, where your tracks look more like modules. You can also just tap the trackpad and open up track presets, and it's up to you if you want to use the racks, which are kind of like containers, or just put everything on a track and save it that way as a track preset. Doesn't matter. But you can also share your rack presets or your track presets with other people by exporting them when you go to presets and then share. So you can send it to someone else or post it to a forum or Patchstorage. We're just going to use audio units for the most part. So audio units are going to be, instruments will be under generator, effects will be under processor, because it processes signal, and then your MIDI audio units will be under MIDI in the module library. So I could browse through. There's also a nice search feature if you kind of scroll down or drag down in the library. You can search for both modules and instruments or audio units. I'm going to quickly select a preset that I am familiar with. And since we're using an audio unit, the MIDI to CV doesn't do anything, so I'm just going to get rid of it. Okay, entering notes into a sequence is as simple as tapping a note and then tapping a step. Very easy. You can also hold a chord and tap. And it will remember the last note or chord played. So now I'm not holding anything, but I can still enter the step. And you'll see if you hold a step, it will show you the notes highlighted, whether you're in pads mode or keys mode. So that's another nice feature. So in terms of recording, very simple. You arm the recorder, you hit play. Make sure my metronome is on. Most of your recording and like tempo settings are under the BPM indicator. Okay, if you noticed, we were previously just had a 1-bar loop, and because I recorded with auto grow turned on, Drambo basically extended the length of the clip indefinitely, or I think up to 16 bars, until I stop recording. So for me, this just allows you to be a little bit more like spontaneous. I don't know exactly what I'm going to play. I'm going to play until I have something that I like, and then I'll stop recording, and then I'll have a nice, maybe a long loop, maybe a short loop. The nav bar lets you select which part of the sequence you want to focus on and look at. It also allows you to actually focus and loop. If you hit this button, it turns loop on. So now I'm just looping this one bar of my 4-bar sequence. So we're not even getting into clips yet, but I can use this as simply like a composing and like focusing tool, but I can also do this in performance mode and like quickly select different parts of just one clip that I want to focus on. Now, if you already have steps entered into a sequence like I do now, and you hit record and you hit play, it's not going to keep growing. It knows not to grow anymore. You'll notice here the nav bar has like a gray overlay on it and a gray plus sign. If I tap that, it turns orangish red, and it's now going to auto grow. So I can do that in the middle of while I'm recording, and it's red. When I'm done recording but I want to loop back, it'll still be in record mode. So it's no longer going to start growing, but it will immediately loop back, and I can start overdubbing. So I don't want that extra 2 bars, but I did that to show disabling auto grow while you have a sequence recording, and it basically turns it into a Midi looper. To remove unwanted bars, select them with a nav bar and drag down. So the drag down is a gesture that's used in a couple places. And if you swipe up, select and swipe up, it will show you like a context menu for some other tools. Like if I want to crop a sequence to just 1 bar, I can do that. Copy, I can do that. You'll notice if you swipe right and you keep going past however many bars you have, you can also add bars that way really quickly, up to 16 bars. We'll just leave it at the 4. And then you can also multiply or divide. So you can like double the sequence and it'll copy it, and you'll get it something twice as long, or you can divide. You can also add bars, empty bars, or subtract bars, and you can set your speed here. Okay, I'm on the same track, and I'm editing a new clip. Okay, so now we're going to look at the auto advanced step entry. So here you just hit record, you don't hit play, you start tapping notes. A really quick way to get some notes in, build a sequence, and start messing around with things. If you go to another one, and you can also have the clip launcher like halfway down, so you can have notes and also see your keyboard. Now you can hold note down and hit rest tie, and that will extend the length of the note that you're holding. If you don't want a note on a step, you just hit rest, and it enters into rest for that step. And you can do this with chords too. So I'll go back. You can like edit a sequence with this step advance too. So I already have notes entered in. I can click on a specific step that I want to start from. So you can do chords. I will say it's a little bit hard to elongate them by hitting rest high. It's with one hand at least. So this button, it's like a hold. And I can just lengthen that. And then I have these notes hit down. The patch in Xeon isn't like a sustaining patch, so you're not going to hear it. But when I let go of the hold button, or I toggle it off, then it will release the notes, it'll enter it into the step sequencer, it'll advance to the next step. Okay, so we have a couple clips here. Probably start messing around with the clip launcher. And I'm going to go in and quickly add a couple other tracks. This is just like a simple kick. I turn it down just a pinch. Oh, I need to select this clip. And we'll add a snare. And there's a lot of samples included in Drambo and a couple sampler modules. So the clip launcher, you have tracks, it will show you the columns of clips for that track, and then you have patterns horizontally. You can swipe up for a couple menu options. You can also hold and then drag to drag and drop and copy. Right now it only copies and it will overwrite something that you drop it into, so do be careful with it. So you can use this as like a song sequencer, patterns. I'm gonna crop it. And then go to another pattern with all of its own clips. Now if you don't want to, if I want to edit another clip but I don't want to launch it, I can swipe down. Kind of hard to do things with a mouse. Actually, sorry, it's swipe up. You swipe up. That's why it's hard to do with a mouse. And it also pulls up a context menu, but it will like focus on that step. So tapping launches. Swipe up selects but doesn't launch. Okay. I'm in loop mode right now. If I turn this off, it's gonna play the patterns. And then if you like hold on the pattern, it'll show you the number of repeats. So you can use this like a real song mode. I want to play pattern 1 4 times, and it will do that for the longest clip in that sequence. It'll play that pattern for the length of the longest clip 4 times. And then it will go to the next pattern, and it will use the number of repeats. I have it set to 1, so we won't have to listen to this too long. While we're listening, you can mute tracks just by swiping down, and you can solo tracks by swiping up. Now I have empty tracks, so it's going to play those, or empty patterns. You can also switch clips, like launch clips, synced. So it'll do the next bar. It'll trigger the clip on the next bar. And then you can, this is for trigger the next pattern, or the previous pattern. And everything, almost everything in Drambo is Midi mappable also. So that's where this would really come in handy. If you have a controller and you just want a button assigned to next in previous clip. Don't mind some of this extra stuff that has appeared. I'm going to talk about creating new clips or new patterns and duplicating patterns. So to create a new pattern, you simply tap the single plus sign, and that'll create empty rows, new patterns, where nothing is playing. To duplicate a pattern, you tap the other button, and that creates a duplicate down at the bottom. To scroll on here, I didn't mention this before. Generally, you do two-handed. You can't see me, or two-finger scroll. And if you need to rearrange anything, hold a pattern and then swipe up, and it will rearrange. Now, if I have like a combination of different patterns playing, and I want to make a new pattern out of that, I would hit the duplicate pattern also. And that is going to not duplicate a pattern row, but it duplicates what I had playing, the combination of clips. And that will also respond to solos. So say I've soloed respond to solos and mutes. I've soloed this track, I've soloed this. I kind of like that. I'll duplicate it. It now creates a new pattern based off my clip selection and mutes or solos. So it's just a really quick way to build up like a composition, different parts of a song really quickly, just based off different combinations of clips. And then last thing about the clip launcher right now, at least, if I'm playing something and then I just want to edit a clip, but I don't actually want to launch it, I can long hold and I can actually edit it without hearing it. So then I can tap something in and then see how it sounds later. Hopefully it's going to sound good if it's in a live situation. But I can get a clip ready and then launch it after it's ready, just by long holding to select it. Real quick, talking about muting and soloing stuff with the shortcuts. If you very quickly want to unmute everything, I can't really show you this with the mouse, but you hold mute and then you hold undo and then you tap mute, and it releases any solo or mute all at once. So it's a nice performance feature. Okay, let's look at the piano roll. You get to the piano roll by clicking this button down here. You can also get to the piano roll by swiping left on the clip. It's hard to do. A lot of the swipes are hard with a mouse. I don't normally use a mouse. So swipe left and it just goes to the piano roll for that clip. That will not launch the clip, so you can be editing one clip while another is playing. What to say about this piano roll? It's similar to other piano rolls, but I think it works really well. It's easy to use, and I like it a lot. You use pinch gestures, which you cannot see, but you pinch and squeeze, or whatever the opposite of pinching is on a touch screen, to zoom, and then you just kind of slide around to, sorry if I'm making anyone dizzy, to scroll through the sequence. You can also use the nav bar to focus in, which is really nice. Any visual zooming or panning that you do doesn't update on the nav bar, just so you know. You enter in a note by just tapping, and you can hear the note preview. And what you'll notice is I can hear the chord in the note preview, which is just a nice tool. And you can also just hold a note and hear the preview. You can hold and drag to move something. To make a longer note, you just tap and then drag, and then you can edit the length by holding the right end and then moving it around. It's not going to be in key. Tap a note to remove it. One nice feature, if you press a key, it zooms to that note on the piano roll, so you can find where you want to be. Now, if you don't like the note preview on, or you don't want it on, or you don't want to be quantized to the grid, this option, or this button, pulls up your options. So turn quantize off. This icon is the note preview. You can have it just be a single note, not the chord, if you want to do, or no note preview. We can't hear the note being triggered. This button turns off one finger scroll. And I think it's just more of a preference. You have to use two fingers now to do anything. And you can still hear the note being triggered in some cases. I prefer to have this on. And then you can also turn off that like note zoom if you don't want it on with the keyboard button. You can edit velocity right in the piano roll by turning on velocity, and then you drag up and down and you can see the velocity indicator go up and down. You can also make it full screen, or like kind of full screen. So that's the piano roll. Again, you can like quickly get to the piano roll by swiping left, and it will pull up that piano roll for the sequence or the clip that you've selected. I'm going to talk about the step editors, and for that I'm going to bring in another track, and I'm just going to do a hi-hat. Okay, so I can enter in notes this way. I can do it with a step sequencer, whatever. Or auto advance, I mean. And that doesn't take too long. You can speed things up by holding a note and then tapping, and it will copy that note. You can do that for chunks of a sequence too. And that's a quick way to enter in notes. But the step editor, it's primarily used for doing some extra editing on your steps, but it also lets you enter stuff in really quick. So especially for 16th notes or filling something very quickly, you turn this button on and it's just like you're right there. And then it lets you edit velocity, gate length, offset, probability of the step being triggered, re-triggers, how many times you want something to play within a cycle of loops of the clip. So like first loop out of maybe every 4, or 1 and 2, 1 and 3 out of every 4, whatever. And then there's a number of other things that you can do, like transposing a step, only playing it the first time in the number of loops for a clip, or random, or one of many of a chord. There's a lot of different stuff here, but it gives you this very quick way to edit things. Okay, we can look at automation now. Automation is as simple as, I'm gonna add a filter. It's as simple as hitting a record and moving a knob. Change this to high pass. And then you can go and look at your automation, and you can see it on in a visual, and you can edit it here. Now you can also I'm going to delete these. You can clear automation and you can delete it here. You can also copy and paste automation from other like graphs. You can double tap a parameter and add automation, and it creates like an automation lane, and then you can draw things in manually as well. So here we'll draw something in. Just increase the resonance a little bit so we can hear it. Now there's all these different tools to draw. So you can do a line, you can erase some, erase these flat parts. You can edit single points with the node editor. You can also do curves with the node editor. So I have like just a ramp. If I hold above or below, you can do curves. 2-point curves, and then you can do these like saw waves, exponential saw for snappier, stepped values, and even these little bumps. Now, any of these, where you're actually drawing it in, they're going to snap to whatever X and Y values you have. And you can do that really coarse or extremely fine. Doesn't matter. It's up to you. And you can even smooth them out a little bit by like up to 50 milliseconds, just for anything that's too jumpy. Now you can also add them right from the parameter itself. You can double tap and you can add an automation track. If I said that already, I meant to do the opposite. And you can also add them here. You hit the plus sign and then tap a knob and it adds an automation lane. Now for audio units, let's delete that. It's the same thing. Make sure I'm playing on this clip. So you'll see the knob moves here, and it also creates a knob. And that's how I can double tap it and go edit the automation track. With audio units, just going to mention, you can change it from like compact to like a full view, and different audio units are going to react differently to what a full view looks like. You can also do overlay mode, where it becomes a floating window and you can move it around. You can have multiple audio units open at the same time, resize them. And here we can leave it open. Let's add an effect. Let's add a reverb for our snare under processor. Okay, so now I have it opens in overlay mode as well. If I don't close them, tap the overlay, it's going to close any overlays. And if I want to pull up that view, I just tap that button. Doesn't matter what track I'm on. Just a nice feature as well. We can get rid of it. Now, you don't have to record automation to get yourself knobs in an audio unit. So if we pull up Xeon, now you can add parameters to the just like the module view by going into the audio unit and hitting map. You don't have to record in automation just to get the modules there. So maybe we want like release and resonance. That's probably good enough. So now we have the knobs there, and that gives you like a kind of a control surface. it's nice. And then it also lets us take advantage of some other types of automation, like P-locks, which is not new, parameter locks. That's kind of borrowed from I think inspired mostly from the Electron machines, where you hold a parameter and then, or hold a step and then set a parameter, and it's just active for that step. So it's kind of like a different type of automation. It's not as smooth, it's kind of steppy. And you'll see a little red dot is active on the step, where you can see. And then there's also clip locks. Let's go here and see what which is like a parameter lock, but it's for a whole clip instead of a step. So it's not automation, it's not moving, but it's like a different parameter setting. So it just makes for another fun performance feature. It's especially effective on the master, where you probably don't have a sequence and you can set different effects. So that's a clip lock. And then clip locks are new. The other, it's not automation, but it's very much like a performance effect. The morph pads. I mentioned this at the beginning. We haven't seen it. So here, I can activate a pad or a morph, and then set a parameter for the morph. And now if I go over to that slide to B, or whatever I have set, I will activate that setting. Macro, like everything is going to be active across all tracks, so it's really powerful. You cannot automate this, it's just for performance. And you don't have to slide between, you can just change as well. That's a lot of fun. It's all a lot of fun, but especially scene crossfader. Alright, when it comes time to record things, so first off, if you're worried about like where the mixer is, the main rack is kind of like your mixer, because you can set volume and panning there, you can set your sends. You can do that on the track itself. You don't have a pan option. You can create a pan module under mixer. You can do panning that way as well. But you set your volume and your sends. For recording, if you want to record a specific track, you arm it for stems recording with this little tape icon. And then when you actually want to record like a full performance, you'd hit record and then you hit play, and then it's going to record audio of everything that's playing on whatever tracks are armed. And you can do your clip launching. You can do your slider stuff. You can just twiddle knobs. done jamming out, you'll go to Files, Samples, and then Recordings. If you haven't named your project, it will create a folder with a date. And if you have named your project, it'll record to that folder, Project 1 in this case. Done a couple takes of recording the recording. But now you could send these audio files into, a DAW that you'd use for mixing that have, full audio tracks with a timeline. You could take this master or a specific track. You can now drag and drop. So I'm just holding down, I have the audio file. I just have to put it over the module adder. You'll see it kind of lights up with a plus sign. If I go to track 8, it'll create a flexi sampler. And now I can play the recording back, so I can start resampling myself. It's just really quick. Of course, you can also use drag and drop for just adding in, drum samples or whatever samples you want quickly. And drag and drop will work with clips between instances of Drambo. So a really cool thing that you can do is use like a Midi AU recorded into a Drambo. Set it to record. Maybe we'll just do like the arpeggiator real quick. Just under Midi also. So we're not going to hear anything right now. But we're going to see I recorded. We'll crop this. Go to the launcher. And now I'm just going to drag this. And so now I have that manipulated MIDI either from Drambo or from some audio, like MIDI audio unit. And now I'm gonna bounce that back into this Drambo so I can play with the steps and add my parameter locks and whatever else I want. So that's a really cool new workflow function. You can also drag and drop, like from the Files app or other apps that support drag and drop with audio files. So it's just a really nice workflow kind of thing. I'm not going to cover every single new feature, but a big one is the Morph Module, which is a new modulator module. And what this does is allows you to, it's like a morph pad, but just for one track. Or not for one track even, but for, you don't have multiple banks. So it's like one setting to another setting. So you tap assign, and then you set whatever parameter value you want to morph to. And it even works for parameters that cannot be modulated. There's no triangle next to them. So it's kind of like a macro control. You can now quickly change parameters that can't be modulated, and you can modulate the Morph module. So that is pretty huge for probably a lot of people. Now it's not going to sound great because I'm doing the ratio. But if we change it to a square wave, so that would be like a type of modulation that I couldn't really do before with the ratio, but it's also a way to quickly set precise values that I want and modulate them to that value. And I think for some people, they're going to find it's just a little bit quicker than using regular modulation with LFOs and envelopes and that kind of thing, or sliders. So it can be a way to just kind of do macro controls. You'll see my steps are like blinking here. That's showing my modulation. Find somewhere where I have P-locks. Yeah. With a clip launcher, this little caret or like arrow, that means there's automation on a track. And then on steps that have a P-lock, in addition to showing down at the step, the little red rectangle, it's going to show the parameter, the little symbol. And then with your scene morphing, those changes are also going to show on the actual parameter. So more just like user interface, display kind of stuff, improvements. Again, Midi learning, didn't talk about it at all, but that can be mapped just by tapping a parameter and then turning a knob or a slider or other control or a key on any of your controllers. And then if you tap on the parameter, it pulls up all sorts of controls. And then a lot of your settings for recording are down or under the BPM, like quantization, overdubbing, pre-roll, automation, recording on or off, that kind of thing, swing, link, or sync. And then you have other settings available under here. That's where you see like your MIDI stuff, sample rate, latency, kind of thing. You can also export like audio just from a pattern or like your full song with repeats. So if you don't want to like perform it, you can export the audio that way. I think a lot of people are going to be using the stems feature to record a live jam, a live performance. This shows you, it's like the multi-track sequencer view. And so you still get some context about like what's on each track, and you can highlight, you can zoom to whatever views you want with a nav bar, but you can see everything together. And then this is the rack view, multi-rack view, where you scroll through your racks. So just a lot of options in terms of what views you want. I don't think I mentioned this, so I'm just going to say it now. When you have select mode in a step sequencer, you can just tap a note, but it enters it in as a chord. So you don't have to use the sustain to enter anything in. It'll show you what's highlighted. You can take it away. So it's just a convenient feature that I didn't mention before. There's a lot of other features. There's probably going to be other videos coming out about some of those features that might be more in-depth. I hope I didn't miss anything. I don't think I did, of stuff that I wanted to cover in this video. I think people are going to be really happy with this update. It's finally here. I will say, if you have questions, you can certainly ask them here. But another good place to check out is the Beep Street forums. It's beepstreet.com. It has a forum section. A lot of nice, fun, smart people who like talking about Drambo and are happy to help other users solve problems or figure something out or just work on ideas together. And then Patchstorage.com is a website where you can share projects or presets for Drambo that you've created, share them with other people. So again, if you have questions, ask them here, but looking at other people's racks is a great way to learn, and you can always ask questions on the Beep Street forum. I hope you have fun with Drambo, and I hope you create some music that makes you happy.